so I have to say it's been too long. First of all, I want to thank the IFW team for the collaboration and the opportunity to come back to Istanbul. There are some very important topics for us to cover. I think Web3 is one that often gets thrown around as a term, but what is it exactly? So today I'm going to spend 15 minutes talking about the way we view Web3 and as it evolves, but also, more importantly, some examples of where we think some trends are going. So with that, I will start talking about also the GBBC. For those who are not familiar, we are now the world's largest and leading blockchain and digital assets nonprofit association based in Geneva, Switzerland. I live in New York and Washington, D.C., and also often in Zurich. And we have more than 500 institutional members across, with 231 ambassadors across 109 jurisdictions and disciplines and growing. So what do? We focus on education, and we focus on information. All of our information is free and open access to anyone who has access to the internet. So if you ever want to get a reference for a topic, check out our website first, because you may actually find that information. Think of us as a cross between a network of amazing individuals building, but also a think tank and thought leaders who are really thinking deeply about different topics. So with that, Web3, what is it? So here's something I was thinking about just the other day. When I graduated from London Business School in 2004, do you know this thing, this mobile device I'm holding, didn't even exist, the smartphone? So when I started my banking career, I didn't even really have this. I think I got a BlackBerry, which seemed cool at the time. In about that 20-year period, how many of you can live without this thing? How many of you can actually put it away for a week and not even think about it? Maybe a few of you can, but I doubt it. We're all become addicts. This has already changed our lives, right? Well, the third generation of the internet, which is what we would term as Web3, the next generation. Why is it important? The first generation gave us ability to send information better than the mail or physical writing of letters, right? We removed that friction. You can send now information all over the world. The second version allowed us to do some commerce, which is a lot of actually Web 2 today, which is you buy some stuff online, it gets delivered to you, that sounds really great, you get information online, but it's very transactional one way, one direction. Web 3 is cool and also exciting because we are now going into a 360-degree ability to interact with each other. What does that mean? It means I can not only give a donation, but I will get information coming back to me on where it was spent. I can actually get a story that might come back to me about how that money was useful. And that's just one example. To me, it is around the interaction, and if you are a business, it's an interaction that you don't just send information to your customer, and then you don't just send a survey that they may or may not fill out. There's a much more 360-degree real-time interaction with the very people and organizations that you care about the most. That connectivity is both virtual and in person, coming together. Somebody mentioned in the previous panel about convergence technologies. That is what we are talking about. It is not just AI. It is not just blockchain. It is not just about IoT. It is when you combine all of those things together, what do you get? And to be fair to you, it's so early, I'm not even sure what we get. I think we get something pretty cool over the next 20 years. This happened in 20 years. Well, let's see what happens in the next 20 years. The emerging tech of Web3, so what is in there? We include blockchain, metaverse, and by the way, all of this information is free, so try not to strain your eyes trying to read the very small font. Artificial intelligence, and there's arguments now that generative AI doesn't belong under Web3. Let's leave that aside for the moment. I think this will evolve over time as well. But for the moment, we include DeFi, machine learning, Internet of Things, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, gaming, as well as DAOs in this mix. So when all of these things come together, we're probably going to see some magical things happen. but it's not without friction. We are going through some tough times in different pockets of this Web3 world. There are those, as you will always have in society, who absolutely hate everything about this whole change and innovation, and then there are others who are embracing it. And I would imagine if you're here today, you're one of those groups or one of those people that actually was embracing it and building or learning. So with that, we have some examples that we've put together. And some of these changes and projects that we're seeing are increments. Many of you heard about central bank digital currencies. There are lots of countries around the world, central banks, that are looking at electronic versions or digital versions of their currency. The one that I have here, Soramitsu, with the project Bakon out of Cambodia, is live. It's very interesting if you don't know about that CBDC project. It was actually the reverse of what many people think. It's actually to get a very young population that is unbanked to actually bank through a CBDC. Interesting, through wallets. You also have traditional groups like JP Morgan and Six Group, SDX, Swiss Digital Exchange in Switzerland, innovating. But you also have, by the way, a lot of startups and even Algorand, for example, doing different types of financial services projects and or initiatives that you wouldn't have expected. And this is the other convergence point I want to make. Traditional financial institutions don't get to just innovate in finance themselves. There's big tech coming, there's little tech coming, there's Web3 tech coming. There are startups we've never even heard of who will be the next big thing. And so I think that opening of opportunity is actually going to be very interesting. And don't get me wrong, it will cause friction because financial services in particular is a highly regulated area. And so if you're highly regulated and you have technologists coming in who are trying to disrupt, that can be difficult at times. And we're seeing some of that right now happening in the crypto space, more for the lack of regulation than anything else or clarity. I think some of the most interesting places beyond financial services, and again, I'm going to keep emphasizing convergence because all of this ties together. Proof of authenticity, proving that something is true, reducing fraud, mitigating risk. People always hate me when I say this, but I actually think the most exciting thing about blockchain is actually how boring it is. It is actually a transparency risk mitigation tool. It's an audit book built in. And it doesn't sound all that interesting, but when you think about reducing fraud and fakes and actually proving that something or someone or some transaction is true, it's actually incredibly important. And so those applications are going to go from luxury goods, consumer products, to food, to medicine. These are going to impact our lives. And if we can improve the quality of what we're getting, and by the way, if I'm buying something that is supposed to be a certain medicine, it better be that medicine and not something fake, or even worse, something that has ingredients that are dangerous. And that has happened from time to time. So it's not about the fact that we're going to get rid of all fraud. It is how can we detect and identify the fraud faster and in a way that secures and provides safety. And again, risk mitigation. So take a look at some of these at your leisure. Again, there's a lot of really interesting projects going on in the Web3 space. But I want to highlight just one area, and these are just trends I'm trying to throw at you over the next 5 minutes that I have, which are Gen Z. So who are Gen Z? Some of you in the room are Gen Z. So right now, Gen Z is 1997 to 2010. You are roughly 13 to 26 years old. So that demographic, how many people knew this? By 2025, according to Oliver Wyman, you'll be 1/3 of the world's population. 1/3. And by the way, the UN Population Fund, we just crossed 8 billion people last year. So just imagine 1/3 of this demographic is going to be under the Gen Z category. Gen Z, and you should check out the Oliver Wyman report overall, because there's some very interesting things about it. I want to highlight the mobile and what they call the digital nomad view. Gen Z's mobility, its connectivity, because they don't know a world that didn't have this. is actually fundamentally a different mindset, which means over the next few decades, as they come into the workforce, as Gen Z actually starts making decisions and has buying power, not now, but give another decade or two, the shift of the way things are done will impact every industry. And that, I don't think we're even close to understanding today what that means. You're talking about the third of the population that has the ability to influence how we're going to consume information, products, lots of other things. In the United States, by the way, we're already seeing this demographic, the older part of Gen Z, influencing politics and voting. So it is actually something to watch. And Gen Z, by the way, 85%, according to this report, are asking for hybrid or remote work. They want the ability to be connected to the internet and do their job anywhere in the world. I would agree. It's probably a minority that are going to actually be able to do that, but it's going to be a larger percentage that are traveling around the world and becoming these sort of international digital nomads. And I think there are some serious implications to how that's going to work. It's both good and bad. I'm sure those who are more optimistic, you will find great reasons, and those who are less optimistic, you'll find lots of problems with that. But I'm going to end with another trend here. Everyone's talking about AI, especially LLMs. I think there's something I just want to highlight. Even though everyone's talking about ChatGPT and GPT-4, very cool in some aspects, obviously many people are playing around with it, there are a lot of competitors in this space. And please don't discount the hype cycle that often is AI. And I think some of the attention is absolutely warranted because of what the implications are to everyone who is connected to the net. But I also think I've given you a list here of about 9 other competitors who are in this space besides OpenAI. And so I think there will be a really interesting, epic battle on the learning language models because, frankly, OpenAI is getting the most sort of limelight around it, but there are plenty of others who are absolutely trying to give them a run for their money. And then one final thing, art. I don't know how many of you are art enthusiasts here, but generative AI and art is already taking forward. Do you think generated AI art is art? Many would say so. And if you're not familiar with the work of Refik Anadol, I highly recommend you Google him, because not only is he Turkish descent, but also he is based in LA right now, but he has done some of the most beautiful, leading generative AI you will ever see. It is like mesmerizing. And I'm sorry I don't have the video for you, but here, if you go and click on his refikanadol.com, you will see some of his work. It is stunning, and it is all AI generated. So think about that for a moment. Art is going to fundamentally change. And so with that, I leave you with a few things to think about. These trends are going to cut across so many different aspects of our lives. The only one thing I will say that I think we need to ensure as builders in this space is that we ensure that whatever technology we are using has to benefit society. And we have to, as a society, decide what are the guardrails. Are we going to protect privacy? Are we going to protect data rights? Meaning, if I'm an artist and I've created a piece of work, I should still, in the virtual world, be compensated and be recognized for having created that work. And if AI takes and scrapes that data, does that mean that I get paid for it somehow if someone else generates a derivative artwork? These are the many, many questions that I think remain, and we need to, as a society, make some pretty big decisions. And I don't think we're going to go fast enough, personally, to keep up with the tech, because the tech will continue to evolve. But I think it's important that every society, in every country and jurisdiction, think about where are the lines of how this tech is used. Because at the end of the day, tech can be used for both good and bad. And I'm hopeful that with the great minds that we have here, that at least in Istanbul and beyond, that the tech will evolve in a way that actually is beneficial to society. So with that, thank you, and I leave you to think about some of those topics.